My name is Amanda Levie, and I am the director and founder of No Peeking Theater. No Peeking Theater is a new type of theater that takes away sight from the audience and immerses them into a sensory experience. So instead of seeing the show, you can smell the show, hear the show, sometimes taste the show, and feel elements of the show. I've been directing plays since 2012, I believe. I'm originally a lighting designer with a degree in production from Kane University, and I didn't actually take any directing classes while I was at university, but I had a very strong interest in it, and I have a knack for it. So the V. Lucas cycle is premiering for its New York debut on September 30th, October 1st, and October 2nd. And the V. Lucas cycle is actually plunging the audience into the experience of a life cycle that parallels the life and death of Sylvia Plath. So what we as audience members actually experience are the triumphs and tribulations of somebody like Sylvia Plath dealing with success, depression, normal milestones of any life in general, and then eventually the death. Our sound designer, Joe Velez, actually talked to me just in effort to brainstorm about a lot of other things. We've done poetry readings, and we've done full-length plays, like original works. We decided that we wanted to do something new, and one of the pitches that my sound designer gave me was trying to experience a life cycle of somebody. But what we wanted to do was we wanted to make it identifiable by a lot of universal things to get the audience attached and involved and related to the character. But we also wanted to create a unique story with significant milestones in which it might be adventurous and interesting for the audience member. So instead of having a lighting designer or a costume designer or a set designer, for instance, we actually don't have any of those things to worry about anymore, which is great in a budgetary sense. It definitely decreases overhead, but it does create a challenge because now we have to have different designers. We have to hire somebody that is what we call a scentscaper, somebody that takes the world of the play and the smells and the mood of the play and makes it a sensory experience through your nose. That can mean several things. Either a scentscaper can either identify certain smells that relate to certain characters, or introduce scents or fragrances that have to do with the overall tone, or quite literally put us in a setting with fragrances. So for instance, if it's a rainy day, we can make the room smell like rain. In a sound design aspect, it's a lot more sophisticated than just pressing go or finding a good sound effect and just pressing play. The sound designer is in charge of creating the beginning, middle, and end of the story as like one seamless, basically one really long seamless cue of an entire story. And that includes the actors, that includes sounds that represent the plot, that includes shift in mood, that includes environmental elements, like if it's raining outside or if it's windy, if we're inside versus outside. We also have a tactile exhibit, and that is basically so you have not necessarily stock images, but stock experiences to apply to the show. So for instance, if your play, or if our play is actually about being at sea or being a pirate or being a sailor, the touch exhibit will have thick rope with sailor's knots, or the material of sails, or driftwood, or sea glass, or sand, something that represents that. So once you experience the play, you sort of have these things to grab onto ready, like on tap in your mind. gaining exposure through some of the avenues in which it is beneficial not to see things. We're trying to reach out to different sorts of actors. We're trying to gain exposure to get better sound designers, to get more sophisticated designs regarding smell and other senses. We're trying to expose no peeking through a lot of avenues. One, for the actor that never got the part because they didn't look the part. Because we blindfold the audience, the experience, which was intended since the beginning, the experience is leveling the playing field for a lot of blind audience members. Originally, no peeking came out of a marriage between understanding the big disparities in accessible theater and ADA regulations, and wanting to experiment with new theater. And I wanted to mash those together and create one solution that could fit several different needs. The other need for the audience was trying to fulfill this idea of not letting them down by the appearances of things or letting people down by expectations. We are trying to gain exposure with the blind community, which is hard because there's not really a solid, unified, or even very large, accessible way to capture a blind audience. We are also in the vein of sustainability. We don't use lights very often. We usually reuse most of our materials. We don't have a lot of props. We aren't building sets. So theater in itself has been sort of a wasteful type of art, a very consumption-driven art to create something. I mean, it's obviously avant-garde theater. It's definitely a different type of theater that's experimental and new and immersive. I'm glad you asked. I'm actually the director for a play called Is That Danny DeVito at the Fringe Festival right now. Our last show day is the 27th, and we are at the Wow Cafe Theater on East 4th Street.